Polish-Canadian Women's Federation originated in Toronto, a city which enjoys the largest concentration of Polish immigrants to arrive in Canada after World War II. These immigrants were mainly the families of Polish soldiers who had been deported to Siberia, or Polish soldiers who found their way to the west via Romania and Hungary shortly after the outbreak of the war. The Polish army was formed in the Soviet Union. They were then evacuated to Iraq, Palestine, and later went on to Egypt and Italy. Many families of General Anders' soldiers left the USSR with the Polish army and spent the remainder of the war in British Africa. Their fathers, husbands, and brothers took part in battles in Italy. These heroes from Tobruk and Monte Cassino could not return to their home country after the war since the Soviet Union had annexed the land. These men were then joined in Canada by many women who had been sent to Germany as forced labor and by the people from the displaced persons camps in Western Europe. From 1945 to 1957, approximately 65,000 Poles arrived in Canada. This wave of Polish immigrants quickly began arranging themselves into a variety of organizations. However, there was a lack of an independent women's organization.
Responding to the needs of Polish immigrant women, Jadwiga Dobrucka founded the Polish-Canadian Women's Federation. She wanted to use the potential of knowledge, talent, and passion for social work, as well as to help them find their place in the new country. She was then 64. Jadwiga Dobrucka was born in Warsaw on July 5, 1892. She was an educator with a passion for social work that was first demonstrated before World War I and in the period between the World Wars. In 1946, she managed to join her son in Britain. She took care of her grandchildren and immigrated to Canada with her son's family in 1954. Jadwiga Dobrucka devoted the rest of her life entirely to the development of the fast-growing Polish-Canadian Women's Federation. Under her direction, she focused the group's work on charity, culture, and education. After 2 years of preparations, the founding meeting of the Federation took place on the 29th of April 1956, to which 122 Polish women attended. Jadwiga Dobrucka was elected as the group's first president. To assist her in her duties, Irena Ungar was elected as vice president.
Irena was an exceptionally brilliant person who was also thoroughly educated. Apart from her native Polish, she was fluent in English, French, Russian, and Ukrainian. She successfully pursued careers in journalism, administration, and diplomacy, having served in the Canadian Embassy in Vienna, and she ended her career as a judge in the Canadian Citizenship Court in Toronto from 1973 until 1983. She worked with and even chaired several Canadian organizations through which she played an important role in promoting Polish culture in Canada. She was founding director of Copernicus Lodge, a Polish seniors' home, and the Charitable Foundation. For her work, she was appointed an Officer of the Order of Canada in 1972. She died on September 16, 2002, leaving her entire estate to charities. One of the first decisions that the new president, Jadwiga Dobrucka, put forth was that of printing a newsletter for the members of the Federation. Anna Ebi, a long-standing member of the Federation, recalls the history of this publication.
29 października 1956 roku na zebraniu Federacji.
The first issue of the newsletter was published on the 15th of November 1956, and they decided to call it the Informator. It started off as a monthly publication that detailed information about the actions of the Federation, its plans for the future, and included a calendar of Polish cultural events in Toronto. The first editor of the magazine was Jadwiga Dobrucka, who, with the help of Halina Pulido, typed and carbon copied all 120 copies of the magazine. In 1963, Mira Małachowska took over the duties of editing and producing the Informator. She did an excellent job of the demanding labor involved in printing the magazine. Each page had to be individually duplicated, and every copy of the current issue was bound by hand. For 10 years, and with the help of 2 other members, this work would be done in the family's basement. In the year 1973, the Informator was passed into the hands of my mother, Anna Ujejska. This duty was on top of her already difficult situation at home, in which she was the sole caretaker of her heavily ill husband. She continued her work on the magazine for 9 years, passing her responsibilities to Ludwiga Sas-Korczyńska only months before her death. In June of 1992, Joanna Matejko of Edmonton printed the Informator for the first time outside of Toronto. A graduate of the Department of History at the University of Warsaw, Mrs. Matejko brought a wealth of experience to the magazine, having herself published numerous books. She was helped in her duties by Maria Carlton, an experienced editor. Together, these two women brought the magazine to its highest level of professionality to date. The magazine continues until today as a biannual publication overseen by the head executive board of the Federation.
On the 1st of April, 1961, the 5th anniversary ceremonies were held at St. Kazimierz Church in Toronto. Among the ceremonies was a christening of the Federation's banner by the President of the Polish Congress in Canada, Mr. Jaworski. For the momentous occasion, the women all decided to wear celebratory hats. In 1963, the second general meeting of the Polish-Canadian Women's Federation was held in Toronto. By that point in time, there were already 7 branches of the organization across the country. At this meeting, the need for an overarching leadership was addressed, and a head executive board of governors was established. Dr. Krystyna Żurowska was elected to act as the executive board's first president.
In 1963, after the death of the Federation's founder Jadwiga Dobrucka, a fund was established in her name for Polish youth in Canada. The fund was used for different purposes, individual grants to deserving youth, or for the organization of youth-oriented events. One such event is youth art exhibit and competition entitled Goldfish. This popular event was originated by the members of Branch 17 in Etobicoke in the year 2000. The first such event was held in Toronto City Hall, where approximately 60 young Polish-Canadian artists exhibited their works. The following such events took place in 2001 and 2002. The event expanded over the years as the 2002 exhibition traveled to both Ottawa and Montreal. The 2004 Goldfish competition challenged the young artists further by introducing a theme entitled My Roots, My Inspiration. One of the many goals of the Federation is the passing on of Polish culture and traditions to the younger generation of Polish Canadians, as well as the many other cultures in Canada. Among the more important traditions the Federation fosters are a yearly Easter table and Christmas tree display at multicultural events held in Toronto City Hall.
Another tradition that the Federation cultivates is called Kajuki, organized yearly by Branch No. 1 of Toronto. We will hear about this and other cultural events in a moment from Anna Norton Nowakowska. Mrs. Nowakowska is one of the founding members of the Federation and one of its most active and accomplished members. She has dedicated her entire life to social work, and many of her contemporaries consider her to be a national hero. For 50 years, without fail, Mrs. Nowakowska would send dozens of packages to struggling Polish families each and every month. Her responsibilities with the Federation found her leading Branch No. 1 on and off for 15 years. Her responsibilities now, at the age of 93, are fewer, but she still attends the monthly meetings.
Kajuki are annual bazaars traditionally occurring on the 3rd of March in an area previously forming eastern Poland called Wilno. On this day, local women sold traditional Polish dishes such as pierogi, flaczki, barszcz, and kolduny, which consist of dumplings with at least 3 types of meat served in a soup. We brought this event to Toronto and held it yearly at St. Kazimierz Church in Toronto. A friend of mine, Maria Bieniasz, was irreplaceable in organizing a variety of Polish cultural events. Alone, she organized over 50 cultural events, from theatrical performances to musical concerts and literature readings for the community. She had an uncanny ability of attracting the youth to participate in these events, and they would participate enthusiastically in these performances.
In 1977, the Federation looks beyond the borders of Canada and envisions a worldwide conference of Polish women. 1 year later, ideas become a reality, as in May of 1978, at the Poland of Tomorrow conference in Toronto, Polish women from around the world gather for the first time. At the meeting, the gathered women formed the World Polish Women's Federation in the free world. The first leader to be elected was Maria Krupska of Australia. The second such world gathering occurs in May of 1984 in London, England, where Grażyna Cioromska from Chicago takes over the leadership of the World Polish Women's Federation. In 1992, the third worldwide gathering took place in Kraków, Poland, where the then president of the Polish-Canadian Women's Federation, Alina Kozłowiecka-Kennedy, was granted the honor of leading the World Federation. The title was then passed on Mrs. Kennedy's successor, Anna Szufnara, who presides as the current president of the World and Canadian Polish Women's Federations. Mrs. Shrufnara has begun talks with Virginia Sikora, the current president of the Polish Alliance of America, in hopes of reinvigorating the World Polish Women's Federation. The next World Polish Women's Conference is scheduled to be held in 2007 in Warsaw.
In 1981, the Polish-Canadian Women's Federation published a book entitled Heritage. This project was initiated by Irena Kremlewska, a long-standing member and former president of the head executive board. The head executive board initiated a motion to translate and publish a book by Ignacy Wieniawski that was entitled Heritage. The book was translated by Maria Zaborska, and the first edition consisted of 5,000 copies. It was intended to give the English-speaking community an opportunity to become familiar with Polish history. It was distributed all over the world, in Brazil, England, Australia, and the United States. I even had the opportunity to present a copy to His Holiness the Pope John Paul II.
In 1987, the Federation published its second book. This time, it is a chronicle of the Federation itself, a history of all the branches from the beginning in 1956 until the year 1978. On the occasion of the Federation's 50th anniversary, another chronicle came out, covering the entire history of the Federation and all of its branches to date, from 1956 until 2006. Entitled Links of a Chain, the book will cover not only the organization's history, but it will also include the largest collection of Polish women's biographies ever published. In the year 2000, on the 28th of October, branches 1 and 2 of the Federation celebrated their 45th anniversary. The gathering was an emotional event, with numerous attractions for all in attendance. There was a film put together that covered the history of the actions and efforts of the organization from its inception until that date. There was a gala dinner at which the members could reminisce about the past and plan for the future. The events culminated in a fashion show that spanned 3 generations. Many of the members being grandmothers, they shared the stage with their daughters and granddaughters as all celebrated the achievements of a generation of Polish women.
The head executive board coordinates and plans communal initiatives that all the branches are involved in on a national level. In October of 2002, a symposium entitled Planning for Change, Reaching Out and Developing Links was organized with the support of Heritage Canada. Representatives from every branch across Canada met with groups representing women from different ethnicities to discuss maintaining cultural heritage and how such goals could be achieved by communal efforts. One of the most accomplished members of the Federation is Alina Kozłowiecka-Kennedy. Over the years, she has taken on many roles and organized countless events. One of her most important events was entitled Operation Life. Commencing in September of 1985, Mrs. Kennedy began a campaign to raise funds to send to Poland, which at the time was under an oppressive communist regime that had declared a state of martial law. The Federation raised and sent hundreds of thousands of dollars to support orphanages, retirement homes, and hospitals that were struggling under the political situation.
Alina Kennedy worked very closely with Teresa Kot, who was a very active member of the Polish community. Mrs. Kot acted as the vice president of the head executive board for many years and continued to be an active member of the Federation right up until her death. Dr. Iwona Bogoria-Buczkowski is a very active member of the Polish community, as well as Canada's political world. She represents the new generation of Polish-Canadian women acting in the Federation. She has acted as the president of the head executive board from 1996 till 2002 and has received many honors from both Canadian and Polish authorities.
As we move into the future, times are changing, but the values and efforts of the Federation remain the same. This can be seen by the constantly expanding nature of our organization. During the 50 years of its existence, the Federation has founded 24 branches across Canada, from Montreal to Vancouver, 16 of which are currently active. All branches conduct many charitable activities for Polish and Canadian organizations, but they do not limit themselves to assisting only their own ethnic group. They go outside the Polish community, supporting many Canadian organizations and even bring assistance to the victims of natural catastrophes and wars in other countries.